Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Just about forgot to put on my headphones. I'm going to be reading. Last night I read three chapters from the book The Myth and the Reality. Who actually owns the United States? And this is a book that was written by The Informer in 2008. If you don't know who he is a uh, someone who lived in North Carolina, the same as James Montgomery. These are two brilliant men who researched at the university's files in North Carolina and also in the state files at that point, and searched the files that were to do with the letters and who was involved, what we would call the provincial governors at first that were here, and how this was put together, and then how this has progressed ever since. And unfortunately, this works, whatever. When they got all this information, most of them, they either made copies of it, which is what they did, photocopied these things. And both these gentlemen have sadly passed away. The Informer, I think, has been approximately 4 years ago. And I think before then, it was John Montgomery passed away in a year before, or a year and a half before The Informer. So I'm reading chapter 4 from this book. I think it's important for Americans to understand that they live in a world, WHIRL, not a WORLD, as they have fooled us, that we are nothing but slaves on a plantation. We have been that way, especially since the days of after the war between the states. If people really realized what it took place at that point, they would have understood simply as there were massive changes that took place after the South lost the war. And when that happened, we became something of a different entity, no longer what we were before. We'd already seen the groundwork being destroyed by education, by the gentleman named Horace Mann, who was already trying to destroy it. I have done a video on the missing 13th Amendment, which would have eliminated all lawyers to be in government, that is, at the federal government stage. So anyway, here we go. And the chapter 4 is simply called Documents of Government. From the government histories of presidents' documents, that is, found on the internet, this is where you got the source at, I underline their own words to show that the presidents should never be presidents as they were born on British soil and British subjects. President George Washington was born in Westmoreland County, Virginia, on February 22nd, 1732. He was the first president serving from 17. He says, I'm sorry, not Virginia. That should be, I think that's Britain. I don't know why he made that mistake. Yes, he did. Okay, he made a mistake. So he was the first president serving from 1789 to 1797, but he was a British subject. He was a British citizen. When they say subject, I mean citizen. Same thing. That's what it means, subject and citizen. Same thing with John Adams. I'm not going to go into all these things because it would take too much diatribe. Thomas Jefferson was the third president. James Madison was the fourth president. Again, he was all British subjects. James Monroe, another one, the fifth president. The sixth president was William Henry Harrison. He was also a British subject. John Tyler was born, he was the 10th president here. And they skipped through these numbers because he's actually James Monroe has served more than just one term. That's what I understand. John Tyler was born in Virginia. So he, as far as we know, he doesn't say anything about him being a British subject. Zachary Taylor was also the 12th president, and there was no mention of him being a British subject also. And this just giving you a short idea, such and such. So, the ancestors of George Washington were among the first settlers of the oldest British colony in America. He was the third in descent from John Washington, an English gentleman, who about the middle of the 17th century immigrated from the north of England and settled in Westmoreland County, Virginia, in the place where he had fixed himself his great grandson. The subject of the following history was born on the 22nd day of February of 1732. Why I'm saying these things is you need to understand these people, they had already violated the Constitution. They were supposed to be born here in America. They were not a part of the ancestry type of deal. So this is what I'm trying to explain to you. And so, such in the place where he had fixed himself, he immediate ancestors was immaterial to the subject matter of this book. At the time of his death, Washington had 316 slaves at Mount Vernon home, and they basically ran the estate, according to that. Now, let me say something. This is a key word, estate. It's simply where we get the word state. So reality simply is that these states that we have here in America are what we call estates. Okay? You need to realize that. This is how they trick you. Again, so they are the states that were named after, well, mainly British people, or Maryland, Maryland, Virginia, also the same way, and then North Carolina and South Carolina, named after Caroline, also. So these are all based upon females, such and such, in other areas of England, attributed to that. From historical biographies of presidents, little known facts found on the internet. Martin Van Buren was born December 5th, 1782 in Columbia, New York, was the 8th president of the United States. He is also the only president not had spoken English as his first language, having grown up speaking Dutch, and was the first natural-born U.S.-born citizen to become president. He is a Dutch descent. He was born December 5th, 1782 in Kinderhook, New York. I have to break into the historical government documents here to say even this is a fraud, because in 1783, 1 year down the road before there ever existed in the United States, that Martin could be called a citizen of the United States. Do you see how government lies to the people that blindly trust government in their fraud? This is why one has extremely critical and have good deductions. So in other words, the country didn't really actually establish itself until 1783 after the war between Britain. So in reality, 1782 was before this. So he really maybe, if you be technical and detailed in what we would call what the rules were in the Constitution, he would not have been he was not born here. Because it has to be after that time period. So reasoning to see the fraud once is found. This has been me believing also that how good the fraud was. He was born in 1782, so even he doesn't meet constitutional musters, you see. What they are doing is taking 1783 as the year the United States came to being. This has to become the Treaty of Peace, which was written in 1783, a year after Martin was born. So he can't legally be a U.S. citizen until the United States was recognized by the Charter, that is as the Constitution of the dubious design that created the United States by laws of operation, and was adopted, as the Constitution stated. It was a confederation up to that point before. That's based upon the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation here, you have to understand, this is a work that I've shared on my YouTube channel, discerning what is true. They never got rid of the Articles of Confederation. This, in a lot of ways, what took place with the Constitution was a coup. I have shared that, and it was a coup. Most people would fight you to the death because of that, because they've been educated to the point they've been brainwashed. Because at the Articles of Confederation, they met, in order to become the Constitution, they met in secret. In fact, the year before, they tried to meet in Annapolis, Maryland, and they didn't have enough people from each state to be there, so they didn't meet. And so they were decided, it might not be a year, it may be 6 months, if I recollect. So they decided to meet in Philadelphia. That wasn't that far from New York. That allowed also one of the gentlemen named Alexander Hamilton to basically go back and forth, apparently to New York to he was getting information from someone who either was helping out writing the Constitution in some ways. Okay? Most people don't know Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton's a scum. Period. That's what he was. He was a traitor. But no one would believe that neither, you see. But, history is his story. That is, they choose to write the story. And if you believe them, then you're taking off on a tangent that basically doesn't solve the problems. Just leads you in circles. Why was it adopted and not created? They did not create it if they adopted it from the Crown Bank of England. Board of Trade, who wrote it? Let me explain that again. They did not create it. They adopted it from the Crown Bank of England. Board of Trade, who wrote it? See, this is what I'm saying about Alexander Hamilton going back and forth. They're writing it, something of that nature, and they're getting correspondence in some way to Alexander Hamilton, and he's relaying that information to Philadelphia. Okay? If you know anything else, Alexander Hamilton was the one at the Battle of Yorktown. I've shared this before. I wish you people would wake up and see the smoke. Is that Alexander Hamilton led a group of men at Yorktown, but they didn't have any more ammunition. And the Americans were on one side of the flank, and the French were on the other side attacking. They still had ammunition, so they, quote unquote, used their mustard fires from their guns against us to do that, while the Americans didn't have any guns that had ammunition. They had guns, but no ammo, so it's totally useless. So they had to fix bayonets and charge. And this is how Alexander Hamilton was able to eliminate what we call the anti-federalists, who were already in these soldiers' uniforms, and to eliminate some of these people simply by the firepower of the British still shooting back at them. Okay? You need to know this, because Alexander Hamilton is a traitor, period. That's why they witnessed it rather than sign it, as it was not their making, as Spooner will continue to say. Lysander Spooner is what you need to do. You need to go to his website. Let me type that in for you here so that you have no excuse. It's taking me a little longer than I thought it would. Let's see if we can find it here. Okay, here we go. So these are his works. And these are all, I understand, on PDF files. So I thought I'd show this to you. This is a site that you can go to and find it. That is in, his works. There's his homepage here showing this is what he looked like, a photo of him. He was a lawyer, mainly self-talk. We'll go into a story about him sometime. We'll do a page on him also. But anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. So back to where we had originally. Brilliant man. So Spooner said they never signed it. In other words, it was no binding contract. You have to understand every word in any legal document, and people of today just don't understand that. Let me say one other thing. I have a book that talks about the so-called the amendment, the 16th Amendment, that never was ratified, and it wasn't. It was basically what I would call written to the point, but it was not. It was destroyed per se. In other words, what I mean is simply is it was amended, and there would be a comma in a certain place, or there was supposed to be a capital letter, and that was not there. So it was not amended in a proper manner, because it has to be word for word, and everything has to be the same in order to be ratified, and it wasn't. Okay. So what he's saying is simply is, need I say more of the fraud and why I say it was dubious design? The framers adopted the crown/pope constitution as if it was their own. This, so far, are all the facts that no one can deny exists. Most people don't know this, you see. So far, anyone claiming that this book is a theory of conspiracy would have to admit the facts destroy theory. The Crown Bank, the Pope, the King dictated the Constitution to the framers. That it was the common man that wrote the Constitution is a myth. It's a myth. Now that the conspiracy of evil men that Webster defined. Excuse me. Just how evil, you ask? Well, this is from James Montgomery. Findings from sources like the Catholic Encyclopedia, selected letters from the Pope and the King, and history of the Roman Empire, and the Bible for starters. There has been a major lie concerning the Catholic Church, that being the Catholic Church claimed that Peter was the first Pope. Just briefly, Peter was not present in Rome at the time the first church was started. Not a problem there, boys. You see? Peter did not come to Rome until after Paul's death. Had Peter visited Rome while Paul was in prison, Paul would have mentioned him in his letters as a matter of protocol. Correct. The movements concerning the Apostle Paul and Apostle Peter were closely tracked and recorded in the Bible. Remember, Peter was called and chosen to evangelize the Jews, not the Gentiles. What's the significance? Well, this claim gave the Catholic Church, through this heresy, moral authority and the base for their power and substance as the Christian religion. See how clever they are? You know, you got it. This is the details. This was made secure when the Roman Emperor Constantine made Catholicism the official religion of the Roman Empire. This is not an attack on the Catholic people. They are unaware of this and are unaware of being unaware. However, it's incumbent of them, once they learn the truth, to separate themselves from this heresy. Now, both these guys, I want to point out, because I'm not a Christian, you see, is that they're both Christians. These both gentlemen, James Montgomery and the Informer, were both Christians. Okay, so they're what I call Protestants. But I do want to read this. It's incumbent on them once they learn to such and so. Jesus says in Revelation 18:4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that you may not be partakers of her sin, that you may not receive of her plagues." So they're basically saying that he's saying here something that the church is not the true church. The lie misrepresented by the popes claiming that they were the chosen lineage of Christ, selected by Jesus Christ to be the vicar and succession of Peter, helped them perpetrate the fraud upon the world. It gave them access to the governments of the world. As a representative of the Roman Empire, with the largest military power on earth at that time, busy conquering other countries in the world. Likewise, Rome used the Catholic Church to the church cohesive power, to control the kings of the earth, due to their fraud and deception as an impostor. As the Church of Jesus Christ, they gained control of the government in many nations. The Catholic Church, let me make it this clear. I'm talking about the hierarchy, not those in the congregation. The Catholic Church as an institution is led by Satan, not Jesus Christ. I can hear people say, "What did you say?" Don't drop your coffee cup. Let me explain. It goes without saying the statement will be attacked. It would, of course, be easier not to deal with this subject and save me from what I know will be an angry comment by loyal Catholics. I'm sorry to say this because of the pain I know it will cause, but all of you have to do is look at the facts of history to know this is true. Now, neither one of them are true. So I won't agree with everything that the Informer does too, or James Montgomery James Montgomery, is that these guys are Christians and they're Protestants, and Protestants feel like they simply are the true church too. The problem is that they don't understand simply as they follow the same rules as which was taught by Augustine. So that's the problem, you see. They never really broke. They're just a branch off the Catholic Church. It's just giving you another taste of ice cream, a different flavor. Instead of vanilla, you got chocolate. So, to give a few examples, the 1213 Charter, where King John gave all of his holdings to the Pope based on the fraud and misrepresentation by Pope Innocent III, the supposed moral leader of the Catholic Church. This truth would have excluded him from being a party to the Charter, had this truth been known. King John would not have given his holdings to the Pope if he had known the Pope was not a representative of God Almighty or a vicar of Jesus Christ, but instead an impostor. The king surrendered his holdings under duress and threat of eternal damnation. Actually, that can't be used in a court. That is, that you put under enormous duress and pressure. You followed what I'm saying. It cannot be admitted to on the witness stand, supposedly. So let's see where I was at here. By the Pope, the allergic appointed victors. This fact voids the 1213 Charter and all others signed by the Pope or any representative of the Vatican acting as the agent of Jesus Christ, brought about by the authority acquired by the Pope as a result of the papal claim to be the vicar of Jesus Christ. End of quote. Now keep this in mind, that the Pope owned the British plantations in America, of the king and all subjects and lands. Please note that plantation means, as defined by Burke, Edward Burke, who is not your friend either. Edward Burke is quoted by people as though he's some great guy, and he's a snake in the grass. Okay? So people have been misconstrued by this too. They really don't know who these people are. They are given certain information, and Edward Burke actually did not favor what was going on here in America, supposed to give freedom. He was the opposite. But he gave such and such speech, so he was playing a game here in the House of Commons, I guess, or the House of Lords, either one of those. Plantations means colonies. The planting of a new society or race. The term is regularly so used in acts and charters and has no reference whatsoever to cultivating the soil. How the Pope got control of America to begin with. Faced with defeat by these forces aligned against him by the Vatican, King John ran for cover and sought to regain the support of the Pope. He returned the title to his kingdoms of England and Ireland to the Pope as vassals. Sworn submission and loyalty to him. Accepted Langton as the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's why he was not in favor. He was against this Archbishop, and that's how it got started. And offered the Pope's vassal bond of fealty and homage an annual tribute of 1,000 marks, equivalent to a bit of more than 666 pounds sterling, and the return of the church property he had seized when he had rebelled against it. 2 months later, in July 1213, King John was absolved of excommunication at Winchester by the returned Archbishop of Canterbury, Langton. 3 months later, also on October 3rd, so 1213, King John ratified his surrender of his kingdoms to the Pope, who by virtue of his position as vicar of Christ claims ownership of everything and everyone on earth in this tradition of the Nazarene communistic, super-capitalistic, super-dictatorship that is truly fundamentally Christianity. Yeah, this has been going on for a while, folks. On April 21st, 1214, the Pope in Rome formally accepted King John's surrender of his kingdom and his pledge of vassal, that is, together with the monies paid in tribute. And 3 months later, in July 1214, Pope Innocent III raised the interdict against the English. Thus, the Pope assured the English of access to heaven, from which they had been barred by their king's opposition to the Church Nazarene, or communism, totalitarian, and denial of civil rights to mankind. That's just his plural on it. This is from the British Museum publication by G.R.C. Davis entitled Magna Carta. Looks like 211 here. So I got a number here. I guess this is a page. An American Council of Christian Laymen. How read is the Federal Council of, this is the Federal Council of Churches, which is the international church churches. I think it's ICC now. It no longer calls itself the federal. So look at this very way, universal Catholic government, that is church. So yes, government is a religion, whether you like it or not. So let's see who really fit the requirements to meet the timeline to be really the first president to constitutionally hold the office. Because some of the foregoings have met the presidential requirement as they were all born on British soil or British parents who were British subjects in all the plantations called the colonies. Let's be technical because the Constitution is a legal technical document, as you will find further on in this book. So William Henry Harrison was the son of Benjamin Harrison, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Harrison was in fact a son of the Virginia planter aristocrat. He was born February 9th, 1773 in Charles City County, Virginia, born of Benjamin Harrison, Elizabeth Sutton. Harrison was the last president who was born a British subject. John Tyler was born on March 29, 1790 in Charles City County, Virginia. He was the U.S. 10th president, serving from 1841 to 1845. American President John Tyler signaled the last gasp of the old Virginia aristocrats in the White House. Born a few years after the American Revolution in 1790 to an old family from Virginia's ruling class, Tyler graduated from the College of William and Mary. William and Mary is one of the oldest colleges. I think it's the third oldest in the country. Harvard and Yale, the other two. And you'll notice the name William and Mary. It goes back to the British. At the age of 17, studied law and went to work for the prestigious law firm in Richmond. As a Southern planter, Tyler bitterly opposed a strong standing army, tariffs, and extended the vote to men without property, resenting this challenge to traditional Southern power. In other words, he didn't want a part of it. The popular Andrew Jackson of Tennessee represented everything in politics that Tyler was against, especially the new voting power of the West. Jackson's government attempted to restrict slavery in new states west of Missouri. Almost immediately, he made his mark, leading a campaign to censor legislators that supported the new Bank of the United States, which Tyler saw as a dangerous broadening of nationalistic power. Tyler saw it as such an abuse of federal power that he resigned from Congress in disgust. Now, we have the first president born in America that can be considered the very first president legally fitting the requirement of the Constitution. That was the 10th president, being John Tyler, who was of the Whig Party that was opposed to all corruption of the old presidents. But again, his parents were British-born subjects, were they not? Yes, one would say that, but that does not matter. None of the first non-presidents were born British subjects on British soil can ever fit that result description to satisfy the Constitution requirement for president. Do all immigrants have to be naturalized before they can ever vote? The reason is evident that it does not matter because an illegal Mexican crossed the border, give birth to a child who automatically becomes a native-born U.S. citizen, or so they say. That child could run for president because he was born in the United States. The first 9 presidents were not ever born in the United States. But for the source below, they underline this quote, this interpretation is concerned with the wording of the Naturalized Act of 1790, that children of citizens of the United States that may be born beyond the sea or out of the limits of the United States shall be considered a natural-born citizen, which does not draw a distinction between biological children or adopted children, even though the process of adoption was certainly well known at that time. Well, how about that? Then that none of the first 9 presidents were born beyond the sea or out of the limits of the United States, because the United States did not exist when the first 9 presidents were born on British soil, or British parents, or British subjects. This is the reason behind what the source added. The Supreme Court has never explicitly ruled on whether children born in the United States to illegal immigrants' parents are entitled to birthright citizens via the 14th Amendment, although it has generally been assumed that they are. This is from a book that was written in 2007 by Edward J. Erler, spelled E-R-L-E-R, from Thomas G. West and John A. M-A-R Marini, I'm not know how to pronounce them, M-A-R-I-N-I in 2007. The name of the book is The Founders of the Citizen on Citizenship and Immigrations, Principles and Challenges in America, based in Langham, Maryland. The book company is Rowman, spelled R-O-W-M-A-N, Littlefield, ISBN 0742558555. 5x. Why I give you that information? Because if you ever want to find the source, it's there. In fact, the phrase natural born citizen is not defined anywhere in the Constitution, and its interpretation has never been the subject of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Thus, some argue that even those born abroad to U.S. citizens are not eligible to assent to the presidency, since an act of the United States Congress, such as Naturalization Act, may not overrule the Constitution. So eligibility for public office means simply this. A person who is born, becomes a U.S. citizen through naturalization is not considered a natural-born citizen. Consequently, naturalized U.S. citizens are not eligible to become President of the United States or Vice President of the United States. Source, U.S. Nationality Acts. Okay, and this is the last part here, and this would be the end of chapter 4. You can see that no common man had any say in drafting the Constitution, as it is stated that Tyler was opposed to people voting that had no property. This is how all states were. They did not allow anyone, that's correct. No one, if you did not own property, you did not vote. Period. That's in the states. 13 colonies. They didn't allow anyone not having property worth 50 pounds sterling to vote or be elector. This is why the Constitution of the states in the United States were never presented to the people, because they had no 50 pounds sterling. This was all about aristocrats, folks. That's what the people think that's them, the common man. It has nothing to do with you. Nothing. Period. The common man made less than $1.42 a day in those days. 50 pounds sterling was the same class as what we call Gates, Buffett, Trump, and all these millionaires listed in Forbes magazine. You know, say more about the common man not having drafted the Constitution, making the government our servants. This myth has persisted for over 200 some years here. It's just the opposite. The framers, pun intended, merely adopted the things already written for them to witness it. Who were the writers of the thing called the Constitution? Well, it's the Pope, the Crown, and the King. Who then was the United States? The Pope, the Crown, and the King. Okay? So that concludes chapter 4. So I hope that you will glean from this and see how you've been, again, lied to, and hope this will help you. Also, look into the source I've shared with you, Lysander Spooner, which is very helpful. Thank you, and you have a good day, and we'll talk.